Um, um,
Test.
so back when we were
Test.
working with this public relations, one of the was the can. Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that they
Thanks, Drew Hauk.
should say.
I changed my gender, so. Oh, I tried. You didn't like.
We had a bunch of focus groups. There were small businesses. We were trying to figure out what the impact was. So. What?
Oh, it's got her name on it.
It wasn't. Didn't give a shit and didn't pick it up anyway.
Cool.
What happened to all that?
The contract expired.
Who has the, who has the
I think
information?
DH does. I've
So-
never seen it work. That happened to me.
Actually, I just found out. You were saying.
The one in.
Excuse me, sorry.
I would just say it was under.
But that's my, I never.
So,
They
well,
tried,
so,
but-
well, 'cause it's the, part of what we were thinking was the economic development piece could potentially. Small. Stuff.
Middle of the week last.
Oh, some of them.
That, when I went back that night, it was like that. The morning was like that. So, exact same time of
No
day.
kidding.
Okay, so are you saying
They're not using it. This is empty. It was like that. Just not that. Yeah. So, little stuff. My thought is, remember the parking study? Gone. Yes. I'm with you, but go. So did we, yeah, I think somebody's doing this, a 3-year call on the capital. and all that. emergency power lines.
One of those small- I hope it's not at 60.
Interviewing for.
Because the temperature's dropping outside. Enjoy my life. You're cold all the time, so I'm not- Even in the middle of summer. I get cold.
You know, the code I have speaks to it in ways, so.
Mind.
So I didn't hear that.
Thank you. Okay, I've been told it's 6 o'clock and that I've already been absent, so I think I should. Is that Mark? That is. Hey. Very omnipotent, kind of like powerful perspective. I'm not. Anyway, let's get ourselves started. This is just simply a study session. We're going to do a couple things. We'll primarily focus on, thank you, focus on the streeteries, which was the initial reason for this. And it's fairly open-ended for folks, for Blake and Sarah, and Mark, if I think we're going to, I think that there's a portion that you'd like to speak to as we're going through this, through the Downtown Association.
Yep.
We have about an hour. Actually, we have about 50 minutes because we'd like to try to take a break about 10 of so we can stretch and then go into a regular council meeting at 7. I want to be clear, this really is a study session, so we're not going to make any decisions or determinations this evening. It's really just an opportunity for council to revisit the action we've taken, kind of review the survey, get your feedback, and then see where we're going and what our next steps might be. And I want to assure everybody, if anybody's listening, or for the folks that are in the room, that this then would be the start of a very much more public process. So whatever we will end up doing would come back to us for public input. Whatever framework that entails would come back both to council for our input, but also clearly for public input, because I think ultimately the decision in this one absolutely affects a number of small businesses. It clearly affects the downtown. And actually, I mean, in a lot of ways, the entire community, because I think it's part of the energy of what we're creating or not, and how we want to move that forward. So with that said, and then council, if we do have time, if we feel like the streeteries piece is winding up, Kirsten Sackett from Community Development, we can move back into our proposed land development code amendments so that everybody can glaze over for the last 10, 15 minutes of the study session and we can move forward. That wasn't personal, Kirsten. So with that said, let's kind of move into the presentation, Heidi, that you've got, and then we can move to the conversation that the EDA would like to put in front of us.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mayor. This is Heidi Barron-Sternaway, your city manager. So, you know, we always like to start with why. Why are we talking about this tonight? So obviously, we have had temporary structures in our downtown. We call them street eateries, and they're spelled kind of funny. But they, the council, they were actually enacted during an emergency order in 2020. And when we ended that order in July of this year, we extended those temporary street eateries to the end of this year. And we said we want to have a conversation about the future of these, because what we learned is people actually like eating outdoors. There's some demand for people having extra spaces outdoors to eat. And so there is interest in this discussion. And I think we reinforced that through a number of items that we'll get to as we move through this presentation here. So, one of the things that we talked about in our council retreat was just trying things sometimes. And so COVID kind of forced us to try things, and this was one of those things. And so we get to look into what does this mean for our future? And so a lot of communities opened up outdoor eating. Restaurants had limited capacity. And so they created outdoor options, and communities did a bunch of different things. So what we did is we brought our cross-functional team together. Those are our subject matter experts from public works to community development to our admin folks, communications. And we said, what are our recommendations? What are other communities doing? And so we tried to break things apart in a way that we can talk about them today and talk about the different elements. Just a clarification, these are not the sidewalk cafes. So sidewalk cafes are different than streeteries. Streeteries take up generally parking spaces. Sidewalk cafes are usually a table length and adjacent to a restaurant, so out on the sidewalk. And also there's been discussion about pedestrianizing our Pearl Street. I think it's called the Pearl Street Promenade. And we're doing some additional study work, but we wanted to separate that from this discussion because it's a little bit different and they may be related down the road. And I will share that as we've done some of our initial outreach with the promenade study, streeters have come up a fair amount. And so there's a crossover, but I do want to try to keep to the subject matter itself tonight. So again, other cities have done this. The models look different. Some have very specific design requirements. Some have a prescriptive building that has to be constructed. And there are many different models out there. Many communities have tried different things, and communities are making different choices as they move forward. Some are making them permanent, some are not. Some are doing some sort of hybrid. So we did hear from a lot of folks in the community, and we actually said, okay, what is the interest out there, and tried to measure that. And so we did a fairly simple survey, and I'm going to have Nicole Klaus, our communications or PIO, walk you through some of the responses to that, just so you don't have to listen to me. And then we've also had a pretty vocal voice support from the EDA advocates for exploring this, and the businesses, obviously. And then, as I mentioned, just the promenade study, there has definitely been some crossover and interest that we'll share through this as well. So, Nicole.
Hello, everyone. Nicole Klaus, Public Information Officer for the City of Ellensburg. So as Heidi mentioned, we put out the survey online on our social media and our website, and we also sent postcards to downtown addresses, and we had 860 responses. So the first question we asked people was, what are the advantages to continuing the streeteries in downtown Ellensburg? And the most common message that we saw was more seating options. Some of the other advantages listed were safer options during COVID, tourism, it's just a fun environment. And as you can see, we have a word cloud up here. People like being outside, but by far the most common phrase was more seating. So that was the advantages. We also asked on the opposite side of things, what are the disadvantages to streeteries in Ellensburg? Some of them were, gives some businesses an unfair advantage over others. Snow removal was pretty common, sitting outside in the cold, safety concerns. But by far the biggest concern that was mentioned over and over again was parking. So that's the biggest disadvantage that people cited. We also asked, would you support having streeteries available long-term? And it was overwhelmingly positive. So 60% said yes, just across the board. As you can see, 5.5% said only with specific requirements. Some of the requirements listed were to address like maintenance and snow removal, things like that. And then we also had 14% say seasonal only, and then only about 19% said no. So overwhelmingly positive support. And then the last question that we also asked how people engaged, do they live in downtown? Do they work in downtown? Do they own a business? And so we kind of broke this out just to show how people voted based on what they self-identified as, whether they live or work or visit. So still overwhelmingly positive. As you can see, the blue lines are yes, the greens no, yellow seasonal only, and orange is only with specific requirements. So lots of people visiting downtown and living in Ellensburg, but not downtown in favor of it. And then the last question we asked, we didn't include it on here, but it was just it was just another comment box for people to elaborate. And so pretty much the comments were either furthering their decision to vote yes or no. So I think we forwarded you all the comments. I think it was like 80 pages to print. So hopefully you didn't print all of them, but in general, it's been very positive feedback that we've seen. So again, the biggest disadvantage that people were commenting on was parking.
So on to the analysis. What we did with our team was to break down the different elements as we saw them. And I'm going to show you these in no particular order, and hopefully they have some sort of flow to them. And so we're going to walk through each of these. Staff have looked at some of the options available for each of these elements. We made some recommendations, and then there's some notes. And so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, and I thought this might be a good framework for the discussion. So for the duration, we talked about, okay, there's been some talk about, okay, should we make these seasonal? And in our survey, we actually said seasonal was, I think, March to October or something, or November. And so there are various durations that the seasonal could be. It could be April through October, could be, June through September, could be year round, or some communities do streeteries as pop-ups only. And so our staff recommendation, just based on the weather and the limitation of parking, thinking that central students oftentimes they're gone by the end of May and then back in October, certainly. So that window, again, these are just staff recommendations, of best time would be a June 1st to September 30th. And in whatever we do, making sure that we have some availability for seasonal removal for snow if we're going to go longer term. And as far as right-of-way maintenance, that's one of the issues that comes up for our staff during the winter. There's snow removal. We have street sweeping and other things. And so sometimes these are scheduled. Sometimes they're street repairs. And so whatever we do to extend these, one of the requests would be to make sure we have the ability to have folks move or to take care of maintenance, either snow removal or self sweeping, or again, the ability to move them for emergent repairs, water main breaks, thinking like that, or if we have a street overlay, there has to be some sort of temporary nature to these to be able to be removed. So, and then let's see here. And again, the two options we explored were making sure that we had some ability to have folks move them if the need emerged, and if they were going to be all year round, making sure that there was an ability to that folks were maintaining those. As far as the structures themselves, there are many different models, as we mentioned. There are some that require ecology blocks on all the corners, because you're mixing sort of potentially pedestrian and traffic. And so, safety is always an important concern. So thinking about, are there requirements that we want to make that create a safer sort of experience within the boundaries of these? And so thinking about requirements for street level barriers, or, standardized prescribed structures only. Some communities they have a model that said, this is how you need to build this. And here's if you want one of these, you have to do it in such a way. And our staff recommendation was really a minimum set of standards just to ensure, and we thought we could actually handle those through the inspection process. And so making sure folks are meeting the requirements. The review process, this has been, we tried to simplify this very much during COVID. And the recommended process, or some of the options, would be to do a permit and then make sure that we have inspection and establish some design standards. The recommendation from staff was really an annual permit with a building inspection to making sure that the safety requirements for the building structures were met too, and design standards. Design standards themselves, again, some communities have very prescriptive, just a set of criteria that you need to meet. And so our recommendation again was to propose standards that landmarks and design. And so one of our recommendations is this also stays in the downtown area, which is our historic area. do a review of required maybe materials or colors or designs that complement the street furniture. So trying to make it so not every streetery would have to go through the review process, but a set of standards would be developed with consultation with the Landmarks and Design Committee. As far as locations go, right now the temporary streeteries are available really on the main streets in downtown, or all the streets in downtown. And then there was an option for expanding if there were safety requirements that could be met. Our staff recommendation, as we looked at all the different options, was really to take the downtown core and looking at the safer streets are the one-way streets. They're narrower. The traffic moves slower, just at least because of the visuals too, and it's only one way of traffic, and so you have fewer. It does limit the area available to streeteries then, but it also improves the movement and the safety. You have lower chance of higher speed impacts. So, and then also consider doing some sort of limitation of either one per side of the street or a maximum number of parking stalls, something like that. And, no wider than the building front, kind of whichever is less. And so picking a select set of options for that. The review process, again, we talked about one of the issues that came up in the some of the review or in the survey material was having some equity to the structures, whether it's an annual process by which people could apply for these. That way you can ensure sort of building standards were met too, that safety was, that people are maintaining their structures as well. And then code section, which might not be important to anybody, but some of the staff sitting in this room. We have our temporary sidewalk and permits and right-of-way use permits in Title 4, which is our public works. And so that seemed most appropriate to keep in there. And then the business types allowed, we talked about the opportunities for, is this just for restaurants and bars, or is this for all retail or restaurant only? And our recommendation by staff, just thinking about what are the most effective uses of streeteries, it's expanding that area, is the bar and restaurant only. And then again, the annual permit, I think I talked about that already. And one of the things that did come up too was there's a cost. This is a public street, public right of way, and it's used for private business. And so looking at, doing a study of some time to figure out the cost of, the public right of way and the use of that. And so that definitely came up in a number of, especially from the promenade study. Folks were interested in equity and making sure that there wasn't a private advantage to some and not others. So, and then accessibility has also come up in a number of ways, with sidewalk cafes, but also with streeteries. Oftentimes they're stepping off of a curb and making sure that we have some requirements for either levelness or marking or something like that to making sure that we have a safe experience for folks. And then signage, and so again, back to the Landmarks and Design Committee and your commission to make sure that there were some standards that were approved for signage. It would be consistent with all the businesses in downtown. And insurance, very standard. And our recommendation as staff, because the temporary streeters are authorized through the end of the year, is since we've been trying this for a while, our recommendation is to actually continue trying it for a period of time. If nothing else, to grandfather the current businesses in for that period of time, and just to continue to gather some data and interest as we move forward to developing additional requirements. So that's really, those are the elements, and I can scroll back to sort of the list if that's helpful. But also we invited the EDA to come talk to you a little bit about the experience and the advantages of streeteries. And I understand I've Brenda DeVoe. All right, yes, our new EDA. Go ahead.
Mayor Tabb, City Council, thank you so much for having us here this evening. And it's my great pleasure to meet you for the very first time. So I am Brenda DeVore. I'm the new Executive Director for the Ellensburg Downtown Association. And I look forward to many more meetings and collaborations with you. This evening, I have 3 representatives from our downtown. I have the Pearl Bar and Grill, the Mule Bar, and we also have D&M Coffee, and they would each like to make some comments regarding this subject. So with that, I'm going to give it over to Blake with the Pearl.
My name is Blake Collins with the Pearl Bar and Grill. The streeteries have been a clear topic of discussion for the last, we put it in August 14th of 2020. And that streetery was immensely crucial in allowing us to survive. My business, I can only assume with the Mule and D&M that it was extremely beneficial, because without it, we wouldn't have made it. At least speaking for myself. The adaptations that we went through as far as the experience we were able to deliver, people say it's cold, it's, all these things, but you give us the opportunity to provide and adapt to that experience and make sure that our customers have the experience that they're looking for. And it creates this whole new environment. People say, not people say, but dining outside when the snow is falling all around you, when you're holding, a hot cup of water just to keep you warm with the heater on you, like, it's a really beautiful dining experience. It's very unique. And everybody always brings up parking as the number one. I understand parking is limited. I think if we did the math, my block is 11,000 square feet. I'm assuming that every block is going to be similar. My 400 square foot structure on 11,000 square feet, I think is a small percentage. But also, I think if Ellensburg is trying to redefine Pine Street or reinvigorate Pine Street and the surrounding areas, and we're talking about the Unity Park development and the Promenade development, and we're creating all this evolution, any sort of parking restrictions on one street is going to automatically move the parking to other streets. And I think one of the biggest responses to parking shortage is what we'll do is we'll increase foot traffic to Pine Street drastically. And now all the businesses over there, all the empty spaces over there are now no longer on the dismal Pine Street. Now they're a block adjacent to, this crown jewel that we're developing downtown. And I think the streeteries are a fantastic way to kind of transition the public's perspective to change. Our streeteries are, smaller, independent to each business, but it gives the public perception of evolution. And we all built them under temporary circumstances. They all can be removed. I think the seasonal thought process, it sounds nice, but once you start breaking down cost of breaking down the equipment, storage, reassembly, all these things, then it starts to not pencil quite the way it's supposed to, because we all have thousands invested in these structures and more willing to invest if we get extensions. So that way we can really create the environment that we're trying to create downtown. I cannot speak more highly of how what this structure has meant to me, my wife, my business, my employees. It's allowed me to expand my employee base and expand my influence. And I think it's been nothing but really, really good things. And if parking is the objection, then that's evolution is going to be a parking shortage. That's what this downtown is going to be. And I'm just thankful to be able to be a part of it in any way. Really am.
Thank you. Sarah, did you want, or Mark, I said?
Yes. I guess I'm the only one on Zoom. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me know when you want me to speak.
Go for it.
Yeah, let's,
Okay. Can you hear me?
she said.
Okay. So our business, D&M Coffee, is on the corner of 4th and Pearl. At our streetery has gone through a couple different versions, mostly because just to check it out to see how it works. I've been to other towns where they've done outdoor seating, and it's usually a partnership, or at least on these other areas, it's been more of a partnership with the city and the businesses and possibly some of the adjacent businesses. And it's definitely been a benefit to my customers. And I think getting through the pandemic and all, I mean, everybody's had to fly by the seat of their pants and make plans, change plans, remake plans, just to, to move forward. This has definitely been a positive thing for us. And just on my personal, with the businesses that are right next to me, I believe they've benefited too. We have some like boutique stores who people will decide to stay in the downtown core a little bit longer because they can go get a coffee and they can sit and hang out with their friends, or they can meet up there and then walk around the downtown core and experience it. On the parking issue, I yes, that is a negative, that you are losing a little bit of parking. However, in our situation, we're also at a curb cut, or at the corner. So part of the parking is either seasonal parking for motorcycles, or it's just not even used space. But in Ellensburg, we kind of have this. There's this thing where we kind of seem to think that if we can't park exactly in front of the business we want to go to, then it's like drive around the block 12 times until you can get right in front of it. And that's not the way it is in the rest of the world. And I think that it's okay for us to, maybe spread your feet, spread your legs a little bit, and, do a little walking down the street to get to the place you want to go. You might see something that you didn't realize was there, have a new experience. That's what's so cool about our downtown core, is we've got all these historic buildings. We've got great boutique businesses, and we have some great restaurants too. My thought is that the streeteries, if I'm not sure how you'd have to arrange it, but if you have a restaurant business that maybe is the anchor for the streetery, but perhaps the neighbor businesses that are adjacent to the streetery business, if they wanted to have part of the space too, that would be another option to to make it more fair, I guess, to all the businesses in the area. I was just talking to customers today. It's like, well, what do they? I mean, our streetery as it is right now is very wind friendly, because the first version was just a creative experience. I didn't know if this is going to work or not, so we just made a nice creative little kind of artsy, silly thing. It was never intended to be permanent. And if it got us through the worst times of the pandemic, that would be great. Well, it made it through most of the winter, and then some of the winds took it on and took it down. So I replaced it with basically fencing that meets my my requirements for people to be able to sit outside and have beverages, because we have also a beer and wine license. So it meets those requirements, but also allows the wind to just go through. It's Ellensburg. With Ellensburg wind, you know, everybody was around today and saw how windy it got. And that's something that we need to consider when we're, you know, putting these together. They are an investment by the business, and to take on that investment, your business, you got to make sure that it pencils out and that you see a return. And so having just a seasonal thing, I think my vote is for a year-round streetery that would allow the businesses that are participating to invest a little more into making it a year-round spot. There's a lot of things to do in the wintertime in Ellensburg. And, you know, you get used to the weather and you just roll with it. You know, some of the other places like Anacortes and things like that, they have streeteries there too, that they deal with a lot more rain than we do. You know, but there's a lot of businesses that are benefiting from it, and a lot of communities that are benefiting from it. The customers that I had talked to today were specifically appreciating having an outdoor space during a pandemic that they could sit and meet with their friends and family and you know, feel like they're not putting themselves in a confined space. So
Yeah,
I think
if you can kind of tie it out, and then because I'd really like to hear what Sarah's perspective is on this.
Yep.
Also.
Definitely. That's basically the end of what I think. I think, yes, we need some standards. Yes, we need to make it work for everybody in the community, or as many people as possible. But I think it's definitely a positive thing. So.
Thank you for letting us be here tonight. I'm Sarah Beauchamp, the owner of the Mule Cocktail Bar. So I'm going to ditto everything that Mark and Blake said on it. So I'm not going to go over all the parking. We get that. We've taken up very minimal in parking spaces. What I will talk about is, again, it did pull us through. I was the last one of the three of us to jump on board because I kept thinking, oh, we're going to be over this any minute now. And so I just kept dragging my feet. So here we are at the end of 21 and I'm still wearing a mask and people are sitting outside. So we are in this for the long haul. We have all put a lot of effort into what we have done. It has really, really helped our business. I haven't had a negative comment. I don't really care where you are on the mandates and how you feel about what's happening right now. We as business owners have to follow the rules. So when I have a guest come in and they do not want to wear a mask, I love to be able to say to them, I would love to have you sit on our outdoor patio, and they are more than happy to do that, even when it's cold. So I'm not turning away the business. You know, it's just a perfect scenario for us in the situation that we're in. And we don't see any end right now. So, I mean, that's where we're at. As far as, I'll just touch quickly on the safety, all three of our streeteries, there is no street access to them. So there is no going in and out into the traffic. They are all ADA compliant with ramps and wide enough areas for the wheelchairs and walkers, anything that might be there. So I think we've all done a great job on getting that part of it. And we all know that restaurants and bars and those types of places were some of the hardest hit during this whole pandemic. So it has been able to let us recoup, you know, and we're still not there. So I'm guessing, and I don't know. So I'm on board, you know, what Mark said about the year-round thing. And what Blake said is I can't see the cost effectiveness for us to have to tear them up and down every 6 months. That's a big endeavor because we have to make them, because again, the wind. We can't just put up a structure that's kind of, just temporary. I mean, they are temporary because they can be pulled down, but not on an easy basis because they have to be structurally sound because of our wind. So I just thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you to keep these. And I think they're just a great asset to our community as well as our businesses. So thank you.
Thanks.
So this is the beauty of inviting people to speak about issues, because I think all of our speakers talked about kind of the equity issue, about the hesitancy of making an investment until you know for certain what the future holds and what the rules and regulations are too. So thank you all for our speakers. And so that's really the end of my presentation. And so if I don't know what would be helpful for you, if you need to look at any of the past or.
Well,
just
let's,
proceed.
actually, I would like to do two things. I think it's a little different than we've typically done the study sessions. But I want to make sure that council can ask questions of the folks that also provided information to us. So again, I mean, if you have questions, certainly we could ask, direct them to staff, to Heidi, around what that presentation did, but also if you have questions that arose because we heard from business owners that have erected the streeteries and are using them, I think it's incumbent on us to have those, to have that ability to ask those questions also. So Nancy, you wanna start?
Yeah, well, so if it's not seasonal, the snow removal is an issue, and I'm wondering if the business owners would be prepared to take on some level of removing snow around their facilities to help out our snowplow drivers.
Yes. I don't know.
No, that's good. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Blake. I mean,
Mark and I can do this at the same time, probably.
Yeah.
There being a roof on my structure, we definitely built it snow load secure. So we did the math based on that. So just wanted to alleviate that up front. Are you referring to as a plow goes through the middle of the street, push off to the side? Yeah. I know a lot of our structures, mine included, has a waterproof barrier on the outside, so it could hold some. As far as us,
let me clarify. I think the question is, how do we get, you've got parking spots that are blocked.
Yeah.
And you're coming down typically with larger equipment to get the other parking spots cleared.
Maneuvering in and out of the.
So
traffic.
getting, yeah,
Right,
So
right, and
maneuver
so
around you.
so they're gonna have to come up and sweep around you, and there's gonna be this triangle of snow that,
Okay.
that is not taken care of, and then maybe they can plow it past you and dump it somewhere, but you don't want it to.
I would also point out that routinely in the downtown core that we have four-wheelers with plows running up and down the sidewalks, and they get into the tight spots. So somewhere in between those areas, there may be a solution. Right.
I think I would have no problem dedicating team members to work in collaboration, especially with quads, if they can maneuver in those areas. I know my team, we're already responsible for shoveling the 40 feet horizontal, 12 feet wide as is. So I already am dedicating resources to addressing that problem as is. So as long as we knew that there was a collaborative effort of the quads, things along those lines, I think it would absolutely, you could address that as it happens for sure.
The quad that's used downtown, though, is not paid for by the city, as I recall. The one that does the sidewalks, it's in front of specific businesses. I believe they pay for that.
well, let's get that clarified.
I was just going to say, Ryan Liskey, Public Works and Utilities Director. Those are all really good questions, and that's some of the stuff we think about. Whatever happens, we'll figure out the best way to deal with it. Typically, when we plow, we try to do it at midnight and get started. Most of the downtown, we plow with big graders, and so yeah, sweeping in and out gets difficult with the tight curb radiuses and then with the streeteries. So we may have to figure out an option through that. We could sweep in and get out, but we try to get in there, get them plowed, and then we pick it up with loaders and haul it out with dump trucks. And so,
Could you address Mayor's question? I thought a city employee on a quad plowing, for instance, the corner of Fourth and Pine.
The
They
city's
just
park,
do the walk. That-
If,
the city's parks department, I think, has some of their lawnmowers that get mounted with blades in the winter. And I don't know exactly which sidewalks and ramps they do, but
yeah, I'm
do
not
a lot of
asking for
downtown.
that specific. The point that is being made here is that there is a city employee or employees
Mhm.
on city-owned equipment that's moving snow at the point at which snow needs to get moved downtown.
On sidewalks.
Yeah, I think that's the
yeah,
clarification.
and that's just something that we would need to figure out the best way to target that in and time.
Yeah, other questions? David?
Since Ryan's here, a quick question on the Sealcoat schedule. I saw in the staff report that this making allowances for Sealcoat schedules. Given the difficulty in even temporarily picking up one of these and not, what, from the engineering perspective, do you see a downside with working around the footprint of the streetery without the seal coat? Because it isn't going to be.
Well, that's something
exposed.
we definitely could consider. I mean, that we overlaid that a long time ago. I think it was like 2004.
Mhm.
The pavement's really held up. We've looked at, budgeted for, wanting to do a micro surface like out in the city hall parking lot. And so there's a possibility we could just go around these structures with that. It's more of a liquid
Yeah, so
liquid application.
Let's flip that back to the business folks, right? So the issue that was raised there is when we come through to chip seal or whatever we're doing and then paint, typically those parking spots that would be taken up at streeteries would need to be open. Okay, so what I'm hearing Ryan say is there may be an accommodation that could be made. We'd have to look at what that's doing for the underlayment underneath those. And I mean, there'd be just stuff that's way beyond. But are you prepared to address that issue? So I mean, what is it? Let's just say it's every 5 years. I don't know what the schedule is.
Are you asking?
Yeah,
Yeah, we haven't done it, I think, since 2004, and we're due its
right.
budget. We
So
need to
so
do
the
it
point
next
is
summer.
there's maintenance. And then I think the other thing that came up on the grid, if I remember, where there were an emergency, we pop a water main, right? Or power goes out and it's cable or whatever it might be. And all of a sudden now we've got to get into that street on Pearl. That's the way we fix it. I mean, so I mean, I'm not asking, you don't have to have a specific answer right now, but I think instead of just putting it back on the city, how do we manage this? I think the other piece here is we need to say, as businesses, how can you help us manage this? And have you thought about that?
So Blake and Pearl, as far as gaining access to those things, all of my floorboard and belief is, I could remove my plywood and get overhead and get downward access into both of those if we need to, as opposed to removing the entire structure. The main part of removing the structure would be the roof, right? Dismantling the roof, taking out all of those would be the hardest part. Gaining access to underneath is doable. I believe the mule structure is 90 degrees, correct? Your base, it's a rectangle, correct? And mine is an obtuse angle to the street. So that way it's easier, you have more access to get into both sides. It doesn't create it doesn't get to an acute angle into the corner of the street. I just want to make sure that was aware, because that'll make it a lot easier to get into those corners as far as the snow is concerned. Always, we've been willing to work with the city from the very beginning, because the city's been willing to work with us. So if we're talking about how can we address something that hasn't been done since 2004, I will absolutely play my role in helping and facilitating, being a part of addressing that as it comes up. Yeah, that's
Okay,
my
thanks.
response to that.
Mark, if I could, and Nancy, let's get to your question.
Yes.
Ryan mentioned that snowplow start at 12 midnight. Is that gonna be an issue, getting the street cleared of cars and things from the restaurants? I don't know what your business hours are.
I mean, they're used to that because they're open until 2. Till 2.
Yeah, it's not always at noon, but on when the snowfalls fall at the right time, that's what we try to do is get started around midnight. Seems to work the best on getting it cleared when exactly they get there, somewhere through that range. But as far as clearing all the sidewalks and snow around all these structures, if that were to happen, that really needs to happen before we get in there and plow. It's stuff we'd have to work through.
Other questions?
Thank-
Let me get Christine first.
Well, sorry, Mark, I'll be quick. My biggest question for the business owners was whether or not a seasonal streetery made any sense. So it sounds like financially, that's kind of, they want the year-round option, especially if it's another permit they have to pay, another. But we have things we need to do. Ryan needs to be able to seal the roads. That's probably a big deal. So it just seems like for this to actually be advantageous, we'd have to be able to proceed with a year-round allowable activity, but it has to be, you have to physically pick it up and move it or get it out of the way.
Flexibility that needs to be built into it.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I agree.
Yeah, so regarding time, there are residents living downtown and having a bar outside, the noise level, and you've been managing it for a year, and I guess I haven't heard many complaints, but
Yeah, so Blake, just for folks, if you're going to speak, just jump up at the mic. No, I mean, it's no big.
I'd
deal.
like- Can I speak?
yeah,
Yeah,
so
'cause you're-
when do you close your outside seating is
Uh,
part of my question.
Mark from D&M Coffee. Our outside seating closes early in the evening, usually 6 o'clock. We don't have a covered structure. In the wintertime, we plan on moving the snow out of that inner area. And that might have to be something like if that were dumped out outside of, if it were to be a heavy snow while we're closed, we would dump it all out on the outside of the area so it could be removed. And there would probably have to be some arrangements for that. I know if you're gonna do like, if I had an annual permit that was, I know that I'm there for the full year, and then they had to do some road or street maintenance that was scheduled, then we would just schedule to move the outdoor facility while they were doing that. And that would have to be taken into account, for any new structures. I would think you'd want to take into account, can you move this if necessary, like fire and safety issues come up. So.
Other questions? Go ahead.
I'm curious. So here's where I'm having a problem with this whole thing. It's not allowed now that you've got yours on Pearl on the section you're in, and you've got yours on Fourth, and you've got yours on the lower section of Pearl. Nobody else can put another one in. That's the way it's set up. So here's my issue with it is it does not provide equity to those other restaurants, bars, businesses downtown who were giving you the use of the street for free, except for a permit fee. Let me finish, please. Without you paying anything, we've just probably, in Mark's case, we've probably added at least a third or more to his seating capacity. I don't know about the meal, I've never been in. I don't know about your restaurant because I don't know what your setup is inside anymore. But, and I understood during COVID, but now I'm starting to say, well, wait a minute. I don't know that it's fair to Dakota or to, please let me finish. I don't know that it's fair to Dakota or to any other restaurant or bar that's downtown if they can't also have it And is it fair to get it for free? You're using city property and not paying anything. And I have a little bit of problem with that because my obligation, to my constituents, has been that we are fiscally responsible. And I feel like at this point, it feels a little bit like we are not being fiscally responsible to ask you to contribute to the cost. Removing the snow is not free. So if Mark takes his snow and dumps it out on the street, I'm still getting to pay to move that snow. All the time that I had my office downtown, I was told that I was not to shovel my snow into the street. I was to get rid of it. So we found places where we could stack it. Luckily, we didn't have a big snow while I was downtown. But I know that I was told that I was not to shovel my snow into the street from the building. And so I don't feel that it's fair to expect us to incur the cost of removing the snow because they can't plow the street in the normal fashion, or because we can't even fix the street. If it hasn't been chip sealed since 2004, it's way overdue. And no, please. So I'm just saying, to me, it feels like there's some equity that needs to be figured out here in order to make it fair for everyone. Those of us who pay taxes here.
And Mark, if I may, I just want to be sensitive to our time. Terry or Heidi, just quickly, my understanding is there is not a limitation on the number of, at this point, there is not a limitation on the number of permits that could be issued for streeters. Is that accurate?
Yeah, currently, there's not under the existing resolution.
Right. And that part of the discussion was put in front of us is potentially there could be those limitations, but that is not accurate now.
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, we're gonna 30 seconds each, and then I want to get the council discussion, something or closure.
Like, just want to respond quickly. The equity as far as restaurants are concerned, we all had the same opportunity to jump in it and do this at the same time. Dakota had every opportunity to do it. Every other restaurant has some sort of outdoor capacity. Tav backdoor, Tier backdoor, Mario has out front, Heyday has in the back, Bricks has their thing out front, Pasta Company has their outdoor and backdoor seating, Torch has their side seating, Whipsaw has their outdoor seating. This was our opportunity to try, and this gave us a chance. And when I heard, excuse me, that you understood during the pandemic, well, when we built this structure, it was August 18th and the pandemic was over and we were at 0%, as far as 0%, or excuse me, no limitations as restaurant owners. And since then, it's gone completely the opposite direction and then come back again. So that was my only point, is
Okay,
that.
thanks. Sarah, do you want
Okay.
to?
Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, number one, I pay taxes just like every other business in the downtown core. And those taxes are for maintaining the streets, the sidewalks, the public spaces. My outdoor space is a public space. There's no limitation on who wants to go sit there, hang out, meet their friends, and then go spend money in all the other downtown core businesses. I think I am providing a benefit to the downtown core. And so, I think also that the adjacent businesses to where these designated spots are should be allowed
Sarah,
to.
we're gonna need to start regular council pretty quickly. I'm sorry, Mark. If we need to revisit this, we can.
Okay, Sarah Boshaw with the Mule. So I'm going to iterate what Blake said, is that everyone did have this opportunity when it was given to us at the beginning, and a few of us did take advantage of it. And I think I speak for all three of us that we are willing to work with you. I totally expect to have a fee. And now that the pandemic is, it's not over, but I think that is not something that we're opposed to, having permits and things to keep this up, to make it. And so and to work with the city on how we can have the maintenance and all of the things done. with the city.
Okay,
So
thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so we're at 6:53. I want to be sensitive to that. So a couple things. One, I think that there would be at least general agreement with council that we would extend so that we're allowing this conversation to continue. I think that's a clear direction. The second piece that I would suggest, and the city manager can shoot me later because we didn't talk about this, perhaps could be the formation of an ad hoc committee. I would see if there were a couple council members and then Heidi and perhaps Ryan or however we wanted to do staff, and then look to the EDA. And then those that are currently operating streeteries. I would also suggest, and without making an ad hoc too big, that you might think about incorporating someone who does not have, one of either the smaller boutiques that Mark referenced, or somebody from Woods perhaps, or another downtown business, Ellensburg Floral, that may benefit or may not, but it would be good to get their perspective in whatever is put together. If that seems reasonable for council, we could follow up with an extension that would run through whatever we would figure out. Does anyone on council have an interest? I'm thinking 2 folks from council that would like to sit in on that, or we can figure that out later if we want.
Given the time, let's.
Okay, so
talk
let's
about
ponder
during-
that. We'll come back to it, but does that seem like at least a reasonable midpoint to both continue the conversation, make sure that those voices are heard, that recognizing the investment that's been made, but also the potential issues that we need to address. And I think the work that you've done in terms of laying the grid out provides a good framework for that conversation. I would say simply that the recommendations are simply those of staff. They're not decided on by council. So what those are absolutely starting points for the conversation moving forward. And I think council would be very interested in an ad hoc committee coming back to it with recommendations that would work for the downtown and work for the small businesses. Absolute commitment.
I would support an extension of the current until we have a definite.
Okay.
path.
So
We don't know
let's,
what that is yet.
we're going to close the study session now. Again, I appreciate everybody's input. It's 6:56. We've got 4 minutes to stretch, then we're going to be back. Because I hate it when Beth tells me that I'm late.